Hey everybody, how's it going?
That was
We were just laughing before we hit record. This is our third episode.
Yeah, that's right.
In less than a week of starting our page, so that's pretty outstanding, I think, for
and that was a
keeping it
little
going.
yeah. Sorry,
That's okay.
that was a little snippet of the Tom Petty song "Running Down a Dream," which is sort of our theme for today.
Yes, we're going to talk about training and finishing marathon. For those of you who don't know, both of us have finished a marathon. I've done it twice.
I actually have done 5, starting in 2001, and then the last one was in 2012.
So David started running way before I did, and then before we trained for the 2005 marathon, I think the farthest I'd gone was the Dam to Dam, which is the 20K.
Right, which is a race in Des Moines, in Iowa. Yeah, I had started out running just for exercise back in like 1995. And then all of a sudden, some of my older siblings started running marathons. And it's kind of a peer pressure situation. Once I found out the old folks were running marathons, I felt like I had to at least try.
Right.
So after a few failed attempts, I did my first in 2001, which was kind of an interesting situation because the Chicago Marathon is typically in October. That year was October 7th. And obviously everyone knows what happened September 11th, 2001, right? So it was a little up in the air as to whether or not the Chicago Marathon would happen that year. It did, and it went off without a hitch, and it was actually really amazing in part because of that, because people came from all over the world
Right.
to run this marathon. It was one of the first really big outdoor events after 9/11, other than I think Major League Baseball had started back by that point. But I
Right.
mean, in terms of a big outdoor event with 1 million spectators,
And even back then, wasn't it like 40,000?
oh yeah, about 40,000 runners.
40,000 runners. So that's the funny part. So when David had done it a few times and then made the suggestion, do I want to do it? I was like, no. At first I was like, there's no way I can do that.
Smart, really.
However, we did train with a group who called Team in Training, and it's to raise money. We did fundraising throughout that, raising money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
Right.
So our training was on the lakefront of Chicago, which was beautiful.
Yeah.
We started in like February, training in October. Sometimes we did the early bird.
That's right. There was an early bird part of the season,
pre-training before the thing is,
and then the full-on sort of hardcore training began in about May. I think
But
it was about a 6-month.
A super slow runner, like cannot run faster than that. But there's always somebody. There's probably 100 people in that group
Right.
that trained with us, and there's always somebody who's in your pace, so you're never alone. So there's never a time during the long runs where I was completely by myself. Although I was thankful for you to wait for me for sometimes an hour. Or
What
more.
was I going to go?
Yeah, I know.
It wasn't an hour. I don't think it was ever that long.
But anyway, so we have family ties now to Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which you can talk about some.
Yeah, it's funny. I have had just quite a few people in my life affected by it. I was on the swim team in high school. One of the guys in my class on the swim team died of leukemia, I want to say my senior year. Then my uncle, my dad's brother, was diagnosed in 1996 and died in early 97. And then the first time we did Team in Training was 2005. I then learned something I'd never known before. My mother told me that her brother, Bernard, not Bernard,
Bernard.
the Irish pronunciation is Bernard. Her brother, Bernard, was diagnosed when he was about 13, 14 years old, and back in the 1920s.
Yeah, a long time ago.
They didn't know much about the disease. I mean, it had a name, but it didn't have any kind of a treatment. And he lasted only about 6 months. He basically was diagnosed, and it was a death sentence back then. So I had never heard that story until 2005. So then I discovered we had it on both sides. So we did it in 05 and 06 with Team in Training, and then we were off for a bit. And then my mother was diagnosed with a blood cancer called MDS, which is sometimes referred to as pre-leukemia. And she was, in her 80s, and, there just wasn't, unfortunately, a lot that she could do. So she died November 30th of 2010.
And I should say that we could not have completed the marathons without
That's
your mother
true.
because our kids were small and she came over every Saturday for week after week after week, month after month, 2 years in a row to watch our children while we went to run. So
Yeah, like 6 o'clock in the morning.
oh,
on a
she was like
Saturday.
raring to
Yeah.
go. She's like, I'm up anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
But then it was kind of nice because then we get back from running. Our kids were like sometimes still in their pajamas and running around, and we'd heat up cold pizza and or eat cold pizza, drink coffee, and talk with your mom afterwards, which was fun.
Right. And then, so I started to think about getting back into it after she passed away. I mean, I was still running, but not running marathons. And so it just so happened that they had just started a marathon down in Champaign, where I had gone to school, as we've already talked about.
Yes.
And our daughter now is a freshman. And it's the end of April every year. And it turned out that the 2012 Illinois Marathon, that's called the Illinois Marathon, was on my 50th birthday.
So you had to do it.
Yeah, so I had to do it. I mean, I had to do it. So we were training.
First, you said, "Do you want to run a marathon with me?" And I was like, "No, I will do the half." So I trained for the half.
Right, they had a half and a full marathon that start at the same time.
Right.
And it's cool because the starting line of the race is right by the basketball arena, and then you run a big loop through Urbana, and then another big loop through Champaign if you're doing the full marathon. And both end in the football stadium.
Which
so
is
it's really
fun.
neat. Yeah, you run in and the finish line is at the 50-yard line. And
Right.
That was really cool. So we were training, same thing. Saturday mornings we do these long runs. And then what happened?
During a run, crossing the North Avenue Bridge, my mom called me to tell me that my brother had just been diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which obviously is another blood cancer. And I was
Right.
like, I'm running, like raising money for this, and how does my brother get this? This is insane.
Yeah.
He's fine now. He's recovered and fully fine. But we joined it because we knew it was a great group of coaches that would get us through from beginning to end. We did it obviously to raise money for a great organization, but then over the years to be touched by so many people who were affected by it and live their lives and dealing with cancer and just part of their lives. It was just amazing.
It really was amazing, and it was funny too because I had gotten to not to know, but I had connected with the race director and the person who ran social media for the Illinois Marathon that year, who happened to be a local disc jockey down in Champaign. And so he asked us when he found out the story about, it was my 50th birthday, I was an alum running in my mother's honor, then found out that Jennifer's brother was also affected by it. He asked us to come and talk.
Be on the radio.
To be on the radio. So before the race, not too nerve-wracking or anything like that,
Yeah.
at 7 o'clock in the morning, trying to get, psyched up to run a marathon. They interviewed us on the radio. That was very cool.
That was very
That was
cool.
a lot of fun. And it was just, it was my slowest marathon by far. And one of our coaches came back to find me around 21 miles. I mean, there were still people around me, but it was by far the best experience that I had, even though it was slow. It was just fantastic.
It is. And I think that one of the things that I was going to say to people, if you think that you cannot do hard things, you definitely can.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you can persevere. And every time we got to another point where I'd never run that far, and then being able to do it even further the next week, it was like insane. So it's also just a fun experience if you, even if you're slow. I always thought it was funny when the coach would say during the training runs, "Don't run your race pace." I'm like, this is as fast as I can go.
I got one pace.
This is it.
I got one pace, and it gets slower the farther
Yeah.
I go. That's it. I'm not going to change.
I'm not going to have a faster split on the second part.
One funny story though, because you mentioned that they encourage you to negative split, run the second half faster than the
Right.
first. So the way the race ran, there was a half marathon loop through Urbana, and then people who were doing the half went off into the stadium to the finish line, and then there was another loop that went through Champaign. So I was surrounded by people doing the half marathon, and they're all peeling off and going into the
We're
stadium.
done.
So I turned the corner on this main street in Champaign by the football stadium to continue on for the second half of the race. and there is nobody, not a soul in front of me. I can see a couple of miles down to a major intersection. I can see the cops have that intersection blocked off, and that's where the next turn was.
Right.
And I ran by myself. Probably, well, it couldn't have been 2 miles because I think the next
It seemed like it was a
yeah,
long time.
but the next significant mile marker was 14, and it was around that corner. So it wasn't even quite a full mile, but it seemed like it. Thankfully, when I turned that corner, there were some other people. But I will never, in all my days, I will never forget that sense of turning the corner. Everybody else is finishing, going into the football stadium, and I turned that corner, and there is not a soul for as far as the eye
Sheer
can see.
loneliness.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I did it. I turned that corner, and I finally ran into some other people and finished the race. So, like you said, don't assume you can't do things.
Definitely. We're probably going to attach some pictures from the past if we can find some to attach to this video. So until next time, just if you've tried to run or ever run a race or want to have any questions about what we did, you can leave it in the comments and we'll reply to that. Or if you want to know more about Team in Training, we'll leave a link about that
Yeah.
too.
Great organization.
Great organization.
They have it in your
we
town.
We still have people that we're still friends with after all these years from that.
If they have it in your town and you have an opportunity to
join,
I would strongly recommend. Or if you know somebody who's doing it, donate.
Yes, even more important, because that was the other thing we had to raise between the both of us every year. I think $3,000,
something like that. Yeah.
$3,500. So every year, not only are you working full time and you've got kids and you're training, you're also trying to raise money. So we know how hard that's been, and we've got tips on that too. So if you have any questions about that, we can help you. See you next time.